Chapter 11. It was on a warm Friday morning when Maddie was called into Dr. Lewis's office. She had just finished her technology class when a note was passed to her asking her to come right away. As she folded the note, she knew she would be leaving soon. The idea of leaving Toby and Nate tormented her, but she knew that this was her life. After thinking about the assignment and reviewing the paperwork, Maddie decided to leave Toby with her brother. It would be much safer. This would not be an easy assignment. She felt that she'd be more convincing playing the part of a single woman without children. But now that she was in love with Nate, it was going to be a very difficult part to play. Maddie peeked into Dr. Lewis's office. "Well, if it isn't my favorite Maddie Olson. Come in, sweetheart." He walked behind her and closed the door. "Please have a seat." "Okay, when do I leave?" "Monday. We can't wait any longer. I need you to go to debriefing now. They are waiting for you. Memorize the material when you get home and then destroy it as usual." Maddie studied Dr. Lewis and he studied her. They both knew there was a slight chance that she might not come back. She stood to leave. "Room number 800, he replied. As Maddie headed for the elevators, her thought returned to Nate. She wouldn't be able to tell him she was leaving, and that bothered her. She didn't want to just disappear, but she wasn't sure of his security level, and he wasn't on her project. She pushed the 8 button in the elevator and inserted her key. She walked up to the scanner and peered in. She said hello to the guard and proceeded down the hall. When Maddie opened the door to room 800, she received the shock of her life. At the table in the center of the room were several individuals, and the man at the head of the table was Nathaniel Edwards. Maddie's lover was standing at the head of the room. "Miss Olson," Nate began, "please have a seat. We have a lot to cover and not a lot of time." There was an empty chair near Nate at the front of the table. She took that seat and looked directly at him. Nate winked back, and with an ever so slight smile, he began. The room went dark and the screen sprang to life. A huge picture of David King flashed before her eyes. David King, TV evangelist, age 48, married, 2 children, Melissa, age 16, Darlene, age 12. A picture of the girls and the wife flashed next. His wife was very elegantly dressed, and his girls were quite the little beauties. It was obvious that these people never hurt for anything, especially money. David King's ministry and our government are, let's say, at war, Nate continued as he walked closer to the screen. The next slide was of King walking into a stucco house on a very dirty street. "Mr. King in South America. This house is owned by an Asian mafia group that is known to fund terrorists. As you know, terrorist attacks all over the world are responsible for the death of millions of innocent people. Intelligence has confirmed that this man King is a major financial supporter. It seems that he has discovered that the more terror there is in the world, the more money people will send into his ministry. I guess that when people are afraid, they pay for more prayers. Very lucrative business. Large return for his dollars. It has been reported that King is trafficking illegal drugs, using his private planes and boats. We were being utilized to take him out. However, if you're caught, no one will admit to knowing who you are or why you're there. You're on your own. Neither the FBI nor the CIA knows about this. Do you fully understand?" Maddie nodded. "Mr. King lives in this house." The conversation continued, discussing King's likes and dislikes in his religious compound. Maps depicting where all the buildings were located and floor plans were flashed before Maddie. Nate explained what each building was for and who of importance worked where. When the evening concluded, Maddie probably knew more about King than King did himself, but she already knew how she would accomplish the task. Before they left, Nate asked Maddie if she needed anything. "Yes, I want to see Dr. Bloomsbury alone, please." "Whatever you need, Maddie." Early the following morning, Maddie walked into Dr. Bloomsbury's office and shut the door. She had a small box, no bigger than a shoebox, in her hand. She gave it to Dr. Bloomsbury. "I need this increased in strength, enough so that a healthy person would be killed. Not instantly, but eventually." Dr. Bloomsbury took the box and opened it. He smiled at her and told her he would have it back to her before he left on Monday. Satisfaction guaranteed. Maddie thanked him and left. She had some packing to do. Nate came by on Sunday to say his goodbyes. They hugged and kissed for a long while, but never entered the bedroom. Nate felt it just wasn't right with Toby in the house, and Maddie agreed. "You'd be safe, and if you need anything, you call," Nate said. "Yes, I will. I love you, Mad. I want to spend my life with you, so don't let anything go wrong." "I won't, I promise. Besides, I have to think of Toby. I'll call. I love you, Nate." They kissed and said their goodbyes. Maddie slept her last night in Oklahoma, thinking and developing her plan. Chapter 12. It was her first week at her new job, and Maddie hated it already. When she first arrived, she had to attend an orientation that lasted all day. She was instructed as to how she would dress and how to wear her makeup, what jewelry was acceptable and what was not. She was also lectured on how to speak to David King, that is, if and only if he spoke to her first. So she was thankful she kept her distance the other day at lunch when she saw him at the restaurant. She was taken on a tour of the compound and told what was off limits and where she had clearance to go. She felt she was working in the White House or something similar. There was security all over the place, but they more resembled Secret Service than security guards. They were even located on the tops of the buildings. These men and women wore dark suits and were not afraid to flash or use their weapons. They stood with their hands holding their jackets open to ensure that everyone could tell they were carrying a shiny piece of mortality. Maddie was instructed on what words were authorized and what words were never to be spoken on the compound. There were no fences, but there might as well have been. She had to have a separate pass to park her car, get into and out of buildings, eat at the cafeteria, buy a book at the bookstore, even using the ladies' room. She was instructed that she would attend the daily prayer meetings, one at 7:30 sharp in the morning, the other at 5 in the afternoon. This is one way to keep your employees at work, she thought. Never let them go home and keep them praying. Aside from all the rules, the compound was absolutely beautiful. It was of the old colonial style, with huge lawns of the greenest grass she'd ever seen. Maddie wondered if people here were painting the lawns. The grass was just too green. Huge trees and perfectly manicured shrubs lined the walks and buildings. There was a large crystal-clear pond that was over an acre wide, with beautiful birds of every size and species. It's a paradise, she thought. All that's missing is Adam and Eve and their fig leaves. Maddie sat and waited for the administrative office to show up. They had a 10 a.m. appointment, and he was obviously running late. We can only get you on the compound," Nate had told her, but as usual, her luck seemed to be holding out. "Miss Grainsberger? Miss Ida Grainsberger?" An older man about 50 approached her slowly. He grabbed the badge that was hanging on a chain around her neck and examined it. He took out his flashlight and shined it on her badge and then her face to compare the pictures. He was making sure it was really her. Security was very tight on this compound. "Yes," Maddie replied. "How stupid can he be? It's broad daylight out here." "Would you come with me, please?" Maddie followed him across the grounds to the studio. He lectured as they walked. "Your job is to make sure that everyone stays on schedule. You're to get the guests on that stage on cue. You coordinate with makeup, hair, and wardrobe. You'll also have to deal a lot with the director and casting crew. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Okay, I'm going to leave you with the director so she can tell you more. But I want you to be forceful and make sure there are no slip-ups." The director was a Mrs. Dublin. She looked like she'd taken a few lashings in her life. Mrs. Dublin was about 5 feet tall with light gray hair and looked to be in her late 50s. She wore reading glasses and used a chain to ensure she didn't lose them. She wore comfortable shoes and a light silk dress that was quite colorful. Maddie began to enjoy working for Mrs. Dublin because it was fun to guess what she'd be wearing each day. It took Mattie a while to get Mrs. Dublin to open up to her. She was very stern and cold to her for over a month, but every day Mattie would smile and work very hard so that Mrs. Dublin would like her. It worked. One day Mrs. Dublin asked Mattie if she'd like to go to lunch. Mattie was surprised and very happy. "I'd love to." "Great, let's go." They walked to the restaurant on the lower floor of the huge hotel run by the compound. It was beautiful and very elegant. Mattie found herself constantly being reminded as to how much money must actually pour into this place. The restaurant was called Swan Terrace. The hotel was a huge square, with the center open to accommodate a large garden with a waterfall. Swan Terrace was on the north side of the hotel and was named after the swans that lived in the garden. Although the garden was the center of the hotel, there was a glass dome to regulate the climate. It remained a constant temperature all year long. Other exotic birds and small animals lived in the garden. Sometimes the restaurant would lower its huge windows to give the diners the illusion of eating outside. However, this would allow some of the birds to fly about freely, so it was only on rare occasions that the windows would be down. Mattie and Mrs. Dublin took a seat near the water. The swans were floating with their heads bowed. They were exceptionally beautiful with their white bodies and black masked faces. When the waiter approached, they ordered their lunch and drinks and settled into conversation to get to know each other. "Tell me about yourself, Ida," Miss Dublin started. "Well," Mattie began in her deep Southern accent, "there really isn't much to tell. My parents died several years ago while I was here at college. When they died, I had to quit school and look for a job, so here I am." "You never went back home?" "There was no longer a home to go back to. They were the only family I had." "I'm so sorry, Ida. What happened to them?" Miss Dublin asked, and it seemed she was genuinely concerned. "Car accident. It was very sudden. I really don't like to talk about it." "I understand." As they were about to change the subject, David King walked into the restaurant along with two other businessmen. Mattie stared at him, studying his movement. "Watch 'em," Miss Dublin said. "They'll go sit over there in a very private section." Mattie detected a slight hint of sarcasm in her voice. "Wow, how exciting! It's David King," she whispered. "Don't get too excited. He really isn't all that." Mattie looked at Mrs. Dublin and decided that she might be able to get some useful information on Mr. King that wasn't in the agency's file. "Stay away from that one," Miss Dublin added. "He's nothing but trouble." "Why do you say that?" "Let's just say he likes pretty girls, and you're a pretty girl." Bingo! Mattie's mind was going a mile a minute. Although they talked about compound rumors and other interesting things that afternoon, Mattie's mind was on her job. Her real job. It was now mid-November, and the air was cooling down, getting ready for winter. The leaves were turning color and dropping from the trees. Soon there would be few leaves left, and Mattie knew that winter was not far off. She had been working at the compound for about 6 weeks and had slowly become part of the family. People were used to seeing her and would greet her as she strolled through the compound's gardens. She had some time after lunch today and decided to go to the library for some evening reading material. As she headed around the administration building, she saw several security men hurrying toward her. "Ma'am, please, ma'am," one said as they pushed her aside. "We need you to back away from the sidewalk." One of the men stood in front of her on the grass as another group of 5 security officers hurried down the walk with someone between them. They were nervously looking around and talking into their headsets. The man in the middle was David King himself. He stood about 5 feet 9 inches tall, had straight blonde hair, and was about 25 pounds overweight. He was obviously the king of the compound, and he walked and showed the part. It was the first time Mattie had seen him face to face. Even though he was on the daily television show she helped to create, she was not allowed onto the stage set itself. From where her clearance area ended and his began, there was a gap of about 25 feet. David King was very protected. As Mr. King walked past, Mattie looked at him straight in the eyes. She smiled and tried to look as innocent as possible, which wasn't hard for her. She lifted her right hand and gave David King a small hello wave. He immediately took the bait and noticed her. She was beautiful standing in the full sun with the rays reflecting off her dark, long hair. She posed for Mr. King that day in her bright yellow dress, and she knew he was hooked. He stopped on the sidewalk and not more than 3 feet from Maddie. As he approached her, the security men frantically scrambled around. They were talking into their headsets and listening at the same time. As David King got closer to Maddie, the man standing in front of her immediately took up guard and scanned the horizon for incoming missiles. At least that's what it looked like to her. We're in the middle of a huge compound. You can't even see the street from here, and he's afraid of incoming? This is nuts. Who'd want to kill this nutcase? Then she giggled to herself. Oh, I forgot. Me. Mr. King walked up to Maddie and held out his hand. My name is David King. You work in the studio, do you not? Yes, I do, Mr. King. It's nice to meet you. She held out her hand, and King immediately grabbed and caressed it. He turned it over and kissed the back, and then softly stroked it with his fingers. We should get to know each other better, he said smoothly. And your name is? Ida Grainsberger, Maddie said with a deep, fake Southern accent. Louisiana? Mississippi. I was close now, wasn't I? How about my office tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning? I'll send an email to your supervisor so you won't get into trouble being late. That would be wonderful, Mr. King. As David King walked away with the security men bouncing around him, Maddie knew she'd be home in time for Christmas. Chapter 13. After the morning prayer, Maddie hurried to her appointment with David King in the administration building. His office was on the 3rd floor. She decided to use the stairs that encased the center of the room instead of the elevator. 2 lines of marble stairs entwined on each other around a huge statue of what looked like the Virgin Mary and Jesus with angels floating above their heads. It was very impressive. 6 people could walk side by side up these stairs and not be crowded at all. The aged, dark mahogany wood gave an aroma that was very pleasing, but also created an atmosphere of sophistication and importance. Very misleading, she thought. On the 3rd floor, there was one set of double doors at the top of the landing. Although the landing wound around the staircase, it led to nowhere. Wow, his office must take up the whole floor, Maddie said aloud. Well, when you own everything, why not? She wasn't sure what to do next or where to go. There were no buzzers or door knockers, so she opened one of the double doors and entered. The doors were huge, about 15 feet high, and the ceilings were about 20 feet straight up. There were religious murals on all the walls. This was definitely an impressive building. The room Maddie entered was also very large, with one desk near the far side. Behind the desk were 2 sets of single, regular-sized doors. She felt like Alice, who fell down the rabbit hole. First she was small, now she's normal. Next, will she be small again? I wonder where that Cheshire cat is. Here, kitty, kitty. Miss Grainsberger, asked a woman holding a coffee pot. Maddie was startled. Oh, I didn't see you there. Yes, that's me. Mr. King will be with you in a moment. Would you like some coffee or tea? Maddie didn't have a chance to say yes or no. David King stepped out of the far right door and walked straight up to her. Miss Ida Grainsberger, please come with me. He used his left hand to lead the way, while his right hand wrapped around her waist. He doesn't waste any time now, does he? She mused. King escorted Maddie into his office. It wasn't as large or impressive as the rest of the building. In fact, it looked just like any other business office. A wooden desk, several chairs, a small couch, and a built-in bookcase. Just a regular office. They sat in the corner and began to talk. I am so delighted you came to see me, Miss... May I call you Ida? Oh, yes, please do, Maddie replied in her deep Southern accent. May I say you are a very beautiful woman. Thank you. He bent over to kiss her, but she turned her head and blushed. Now, baby, he said, you don't have to be scared of me. I'm going to take real good care of you. He put his hand on her knee. You don't understand, sir. You see, What is it, sweetheart? I've never been with a... "Oh, you mean you're a virgin? Hallelujah! I've hit the lottery this time." King swung his head back and chuckled aloud. "We'll go very, very slow, honey child." He gave her another kiss on the cheek, then sat back. They talked for about 10 minutes before King felt that it was time for her to go to work. He didn't want anyone to get suspicious. They made arrangements to meet again real soon. That was just fine with Maddie. Maddie and David King did meet again very soon. They met that night for dinner in the Swan Terrace. They met there every other night for 2 weeks in his small but private area. He would hold her hand, stroke her hair, and kiss her cheek. He even put his hand under her blouse on one occasion and massaged her breast and nipple. It made Maddie want to vomit, but she had to play the part or King would not believe her. King wanted Ida to be comfortable, and Maddie pretended to loosen up a little each time. She knew it wouldn't be too much longer before he made his move. King ensured that only his security guards saw her coming and going. Appearance was very important to him. If the public knew what he was really like, they'd stop sending their hard-earned dollars in hopes of being saved by this man of God. Some man of God, Maddie would say to herself. If this is the kind of man who will be in heaven waiting for me, I believe I'd rather go someplace else. This world will be better off without David King. 10 days before Christmas, Mr. King finally invited Miss Ida to his private living quarters. Maddie was busy hustling the guests on and off the set and secretly wondering what Toby and Nate were doing. She missed them very much and yearned to be home. A security man waited until after the last guest was escorted to the set before approaching Ida. "Ma'am?" He looked around again, searching for the incoming missiles. Boy, these guys are strange, Maddie thought. "This is for you." He handed her a folded piece of paper. "Please read it in private and destroy it once you've read it," he stated firmly. "Okay." Maddie took the folded paper and inserted it behind her other papers on her clipboard. After the last guest was ushered back to their dressing room, she took a short break in the ladies' room.